Let's say you're in the market for a nice premium luxury sedan. What do you go for? Maybe an S-Class or an A8 or a 7 Series? Well, what are your criteria? You're probably looking for something that's nice and spacious, something that has automatic braking, collision assist, or blind spot monitoring, maybe some features and amenities like Apple CarPlay and heated and cooled seats and a navigation system or a heads-up display that can, make your life easier and really give you the best bang for your buck. But at the heart of it all, what you really want is a car that drives and feels really comfortable. Well, Cadillac says that this 2018 CT6 satisfies all of that criteria. So why isn't it a more popular option?
When you look at it from the outside, the CT6 has all of Cadillac's new and stylish design language. The tall and narrow LED headlights and taillights, sleek body lines that run down the side of the car, wheels the size of Captain America's shield, and a massive grille that reminds you and everyone else on the road that you're driving a Cadillac.
But it does beg the question, at the price point of this car, does it really whisper elegance and luxury the way that some of its competitors do? Cadillac built this car to compete with the likes of the S-Class, the A8, BMW 7 Series, and if you ask me, it doesn't really feel like it's competition for those cars. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. So once you actually set foot in the CT6, things definitely start taking a turn for the better. So the materials in here are really nice. So you have a nice wood trim that kind of runs along the dash and on some of the door panels into the back seats. You have nice soft touch materials, some leather, some pleather, everywhere around the car. And the seats and everything are nice and cozy. They don't really wrap into you, but in this kind of a car, you don't really want that. Obviously, the seats are heated. Unfortunately, they're not cooled. But something else that a lot of reviewers kind of overlook sometimes is the steering wheel. And the steering wheel in this car is really nice. It's one of the better things in here, ergonomically and aesthetically speaking. It's got a nice thickness to it, and the material is really nice. The driving position for your hands is really comfortable. You could drive this car all day, which is rather ironic because the whole point of this car is that you don't drive it yourself. I will say there are way too many buttons on this steering wheel. There's a total of, I think, 19 I counted earlier, and that's too many. It's nice, and they're all definitely things that you want to have buttons for, but I feel like some of them could be better positioned or better maneuvered so that you don't have this many on there.
Moving on to the tech, and honestly, this may be this car's saving grace. You get this nice large 10.2-inch screen smack dab in the middle of the dash that has just about all the information you could ever need in it. Response time is decent, everything is pretty smooth, and it has compatibility for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But Cadillac still puts some effort into each of the apps on this system. There's even this neat feature where the menus disappear but then reappear as you bring your finger closer to the screen. It's pretty cool. The infotainment is accompanied by this partially digital and partially analog gauge cluster. You have a nice screen in the middle where you can put all sorts of information, and then two smaller screens on either side where you can put auxiliary information, like your follow distance for cruise control, and your phone battery and connection, music, and other things. Paired with this is a bright heads-up display, adjusted, and that gives you a summary of all the information that you would need while you're driving. You can cycle through this similar to the other menus in the car, but it will show you your current speed limit, the speed that you're currently traveling at, and will change depending on what you do throughout the rest of the car. If you change a track, it shows up. If you want directions, they show up. and so on and so forth. In addition to these, you get quad zone climate control, a 360-degree camera, a seatbelt that tightens itself to the driver as you reach 10 to 15 miles an hour, blind spot monitoring, automatic braking, pedestrian detection, and Super Cruise, a system that literally allows the car to drive itself on the highway completely hands-free, and a rear view mirror that is actually a camera. But I still can't help but think this impressively long list of features is nice. But when does the car start competing with the luxury sedans that Cadillac claims to be targeting? Well, considering how all of those cars are designed for people to be driven around in, maybe our answer is in the passenger's perspective.
Hopping into the back seat here, and the situation doesn't really change all that much. Headroom and legroom are great. There's plenty of space here and plenty of space going up, but aside from that, you're not really getting a whole lot back here. You have heated seats, which are an option. They're controlled by the door right here, and you do have window screens that go up and down on the side windows as well as on the rear. So my problem with this car is really straightforward. When you step into an S-Class or a 7 Series or an A8, you feel like you're in control. There are features for the passengers that sit in the back seat, because most of the time when you buy a car like that, you're riding in the back seat. And as a car that's trying to compete with those cars, this car doesn't offer any of that. And that's kind of an issue, right? So when you're trying to compete with names and brands that have been established for decades now, you need to be giving us a lot more as if you're trying to be competition. I'm not saying that it's not a nice place to be back here, but honestly, you'd feel pretty much the same sitting in the back of a Civic. Now, Cadillacs of yesteryear were known for two things. One was a luxurious and spacious cabin, and two was a buttery smooth ride. Now, I've made my opinions known about how the first category has played out, but maybe the CT6 can score some brownie points on that second category. So this is the 2018 Cadillac CT6. It is the 3.6 liter engine, which is like the middle trim level. This car supposedly makes 335 horsepower and I believe 264 pound-feet of torque, which is decent. But again, when you're comparing it to the likes of the S-Class or the A8, it is a little bit on the low side, especially for the mid-level trim. But then again, price-wise, it is a decent amount cheaper. Fuel efficiency, on the other hand, is a decent amount better than it would be in some of those other cars. And actually, I forgot to mention, but the Cadillac does have self-tightening seat belts. So it pretty much pulls back on the seatbelt and kind of attaches to the driver as you're driving once you hit 15 miles an hour or so. As I was saying, fuel efficiency is a little bit better on this than it would be on some of those other cars. It gets around 18 miles to the gallon in the city and 27, I believe, on the highway, for a combined fuel efficiency of around 21 miles to the gallon. So this car is equipped with the 3.6 liter engine. There's a 2 liter turbocharged engine, which is the lower trim level, and then a 3 liter twin turbocharged engine, which is one level higher. With the 3 liter engine, you get 404 horsepower, whereas the 2 liter one makes even less, I believe like 220 something. But as I said before, Cadillac knows how to make a car that shifts buttery smooth, and this is definitely a similar experience. I very rarely actually know when the car is shifting unless I'm looking at the tach, and the reason for that is that they just did a really good job developing the software for the transmission. So I have noticed some issues. It's definitely not without fault, but those issues are mostly at low speeds. That's when it starts to get a little bit jerky, but it's not as jerky as it would be in any other vehicle. The car also does a really good job of kind of soaking up the bumps. Older Cadillacs, I feel like, did a better job, but that could be for a variety of reasons. But Cadillac does a really good job of making this cabin really quiet. Despite having 22-inch wheels outside with like relatively slim sidewall tires, there's not much road noise in here. And part of the reason for that is that Cadillac fitted this car with microphones and speakers to essentially capture noise from outside and then like cancel it. It's noise canceling, like noise canceling headphones. Cadillac also uses the speaker system to feed back in engine noise when you accelerate, like so. Some of that noise is fed in through the speakers, which to me kind of seems like they're a little bit confused. For the target demographic of this vehicle, most of the time you don't want to hear the engine. So having it come into the cabin feels a little backwards, if you will. So this road that we're on right now is normally pretty bumpy. Bring the Corvette around here and that camera would be bouncing around like no other. But in this car, it's pretty decent. The suspension is tuned relatively nicely and it's very smooth. It soaks up a lot of the bumps, and there's not a whole lot of another CT6. there's not a whole lot of, you know, feedback coming back into the car, which I guess in a car like this is pretty good. And the other thing is steering response is a lot better than you would expect for a car this size. You would kind of expect a car like this to be a bit boaty, right? And a little floaty around the road, but steering is really smart and direct, and it goes exactly where you want it to go. And part of the reason for that is that this car does come equipped with rear wheel steering, which I guess most of the cars in this segment do now, which makes it easier for it to turn in and turn out, and it tightens up the turning radius and everything. And, you know, the transmission shifts really nice and smooth along the entire way. It's a very comfortable driving experience. I don't have a whole lot of bad things to say about this. I do think that the driving experience could be slightly improved by reducing the, or I guess increasing the sidewall thickness and kind of reducing the size of the wheels so that the tires would soak up more of the road noise, and then, you know, kind of allow you to have an even smoother driving experience. And of course you have all the normal technology guides. You have the lane keep assist and distance monitoring, automatic braking, you know, dynamic cruise control. This car obviously has Super Cruise, which works nicely when it works, but getting it to work is a little bit difficult because Cadillac's roads, or Cadillac's mapped roads, are not always available for some reason. So I've taken this car to roads where Super Cruise should be available, and I've gotten an error message that said that it wasn't. But setting it up and using it when it does work is pretty straightforward. And, you know, the car also does come with paddle shifters mounted on the back of the wheel here. I wouldn't recommend using them because they are just about as responsive as the ladies are to me. But all of that aside, the driving experience, definitely a redeeming quality for the CT6. So I mean, the car does a decent job of picking up and moving, and you know, that's all fine and dandy, I guess. But you know, it feels a little confused, like it doesn't know exactly what it wants to do, which I guess is kind of similar to what you've heard from other reviewers if, you know, this is your first time coming to my channel. And a lot of the features that are in here are really solid features, and definitely things that you would want on any luxury car. But I guess the issue is, at the price point that they're targeting, it's just not enough. If they're targeting the S-Class and the A8 or the 7 Series, you need more. in this car. If I was to look at this car, if I was to sit in here, read the features and the spec list, and then guess what its competition was, I would not put it up with the S-Class and the 7 Series and the A8. I would probably more realistically put it down with maybe the Volvo S60, maybe the E-Class 5 Series, somewhere in that range, but definitely not up with the other flagship cars. So I mentioned this during the drive, but I figured I should also mention it now. Let's talk about Super Cruise. So the way that Super Cruise works is that Cadillac went out and scanned a lot of the highways all across America with LiDAR, so that this car would know exactly where it was at any given point in time. And in theory, that's great, and it should work fantastic. And so this car would use those LiDAR maps and the information provided to it by the GPS, and it should be able to drive itself. So I've gotten it to work maybe twice, and in the 2 times that I did get it to work, it was in and out in like 2 seconds. If you blinked, you would have missed it. And that's essentially the problem with this car. It's trying to do too many things well, and it doesn't do anything great. And that's kind of the reason why companies like Mercedes, BMW, and Audi haven't released systems like that. It's because they like to check things twice, 3 times, 4 times before they actually release it to the public. And I feel that by doing something like this, Cadillac kind of forgot the essence of this car. A boat that blasts 50 Cent music as I drive my friends to the club. And of course, you know I'm kidding when I say that, but I'm serious when I say that it doesn't know what it should be. It doesn't know where it fits in. And that's something that Cadillac needs to figure out. So thank you for watching. Hopefully this video was informative. If it was, consider liking this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.